All right. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to each of you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I think we're live. Let me just confirm. If you are hopping in, welcome. This is part two of what we discussed last week. My name is Shanika Hallback, and I help churches, small businesses, and individuals get financially organized. And so I'm always honored to be on with you, always honored to share some information that you may not know, right? And if you don't know, it's good information for you to know because this information will help you remain audit compliant. It will also help you to make sure that you are ready financially and you are prepared financially. I always say those who steward their finances well, you can tell what's in your heart by how well you steward your finances. And so, welcome again. Click like and share this with someone who needs to hear it. All right. So, as I like to do, I'm going to jump right in. Okay. If you have questions, I have my other little device over here. I will try to catch some of your questions if I can see them as I am on, because I want to make sure to be a resource for you, to be a resource for your church. All right. So if you were with us last week, we started part one of this one claim. What can one claim do, right, to your business, to your church? You never know. You want to make sure that you are prepared as a church. It only takes one claim. It only takes one lawsuit to cost your church or your business thousands, and you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you are properly prepared. And so last week we talked about the first five insurances. And again, I like to make this disclaimer. I am not an insurance broker. Neither do I provide insurance policies or services or any of those things. I am an accounting advisor and I help again churches, small businesses, and individuals get financially organized. And this is one of the ways that we do that by making sure that you have the correct policies in place so that if something does happen, we always say, God forbid, we don't ever want anything to happen. We don't ever plan for anything to happen, but that's what insurance is for. Okay. And so last week we went over part one, and I gave you five of insurances that you need to have. And if you missed that one, go back and listen to the replay. You can catch it here and or on our YouTube channel. But we talked about general liability insurance. We talked about property insurance. We talked about workers' compensation insurance, pastoral professional liability insurance. That is a big one for you pastors out there, ministry leaders who are giving advice on a daily and weekly basis. And then we talked about our directors and officers insurance. And I gave you some details on each one of those and kind of what you want to consider as it relates to those. So today we're going to jump into the second half of this, and I'm going to give you five more. If you are tracking with me, say five more. All right. So number six on our list will be sexual misconduct and abuse coverage. Sexual misconduct and abuse coverage. Now, again, nobody is looking for this to happen, but we have to be realistic. As you know, I like to say faith and practicality, right? We are dealing with people on a day-to-day basis, whether it's in your church, in your ministry, in your business, or in your individual life. You want to make sure that you have this insurance. This insurance covers claims involving any type of abuse or misconduct. It also usually covers legal defense costs, right? Unfortunately, we are not immune to situations that will require this insurance, right? But strong insurance and screening procedures and child protection policies are critical when you are looking at this. You want to make sure that in your ministry and or in your church, in your business, that you have some policies already in place. Some things that you can do is actually have background checks. If you're not background checking those who are serving specifically in your ministries, I know children's ministries are one of those areas that you want to make sure that you have background checks. You never just want to trust someone. We never look for the bad. We always hope the best, right? But at the same time, you want to do your due diligence. There have been so many different stories and situations that have occurred from time and time again inside of religious organizations. Okay. religious organizations. I'm going to leave it at that. We are not going to be oblivious to this. We are not going to sweep it under the rug. We are not going to even say that these things do not happen, because there are facts that have proven that these things have happened. And I'm not teaching from a pastoral, I guess, place today, but I am passionate about us stewarding what we have well and making sure that we have things in place and that we are not breaking any of the laws in heaven and or in the earth. Okay. So you want to make sure that you are running background checks. You want to make sure that you have policies in place on how do you handle sexual misconduct or abuse of any kind within your ministry. As it relates to this coverage, typically this coverage is about 500,000 to a million. Again, these are just standards. These are not catered to any particular business or ministry. It really depends on the size of your ministry and the type of coverage that you need. But I will say that the coverage, common coverage, is from that 500,000 to 1 million coverage. Okay. This coverage should never replace strong screening again in child protected protection procedures, child and adult, right? So you want to make sure you have policies in place. You want to make sure you have procedures in place. So I'm going to ask you this. Does your church require background checks for your ministry leaders, your ministry workers, your volunteers that are working in certain departments, such as high touch areas, such as children's ministry, such as your finance teams, maybe some other counseling type ministries and things that you may have on your staff and or in your business? If you have a normal business, you should definitely have this as a overarching part of your business. But I'm going to ask you this. Does your church require background checks? And if not, this is definitely something that you want to consider, and you want to make sure that you have some type of policy coverage for this. Let's move on to number 7. Again, this is a continuation of next week. So, well, last week. We're continuing it this week. So, number 7 is cyber liability insurance. Cyber liability insurance. Now, we know that we live in a world where the internet is very high touch. Sensitive data is very high touch. Information is at our fingertips, right? What this insurance covers is any data breaches, any hacks from your business, sensitive data, donor information, ransom attacks, cyber fraud. You want to make sure that when you get this insurance, that it at least covers those particular areas. I'll give you an example. A hacker gains access to the donor given records, right? We see this a lot just in the world in general, where people are not honest and they're scamming and all the things. And so you want to make sure you have this insurance if you feel like this applies to your ministry, if you feel like this applies to your business, if you have sensitive data, which we all do. You want to make sure that it is secured, but that you also have some type of cyber liability insurance just in case something happens. And it may not be you directly, it may be those volunteers or those people who are on staff that may be downloading things to their computers or clicking on links and emails without vetting them. Those type things you want to be very sensitive to. I will also say you want to train your staff on any cyber type of attacks. If you can train them yourself, if you have somebody in-house to do that, or you can hire a third party to kind of give your ministry, your business, some heads up on some of the things that are out there just to keep you safe. Okay. Churches are increasingly storing sensitive financial and personal data online. And so you want to make sure that if that is you, especially if you're doing things in a manual way, that you have that insurance, right? It covers any breaches. You want to make sure that covers any type of theft, right? So it could be something as simple as leaving a piece of paper that has someone's social security number on your desk, right? Or on a desk. You want to make sure that you are training staff in that type of way, not to just leave sensitive data around, but it could be something as simple as that. And somebody who may be visiting your office that has nothing to do with your team could see that information, and then you don't know. You don't know what can happen with it. So safeguard your important documentation, safeguard your information, but have this cyber insurance just in case you need it. Right. The coverage for this is anywhere from 250,000 to a million. Again, this is just common standard. You will work with your insurance broker to see what works well for you. But a lot of people who have like online giving and databases, you want to have at least $1 million as a minimum. All right, the more donor information and financial data you store, the more cyber protection you should consider. So, the more donor information and financial data you store, the more cyber protection you should consider. So, I will ask you just as I have been asking you last week and so far, how many people have asked access your financial data from your church or your systems and or your database? How many people have access to that? If it is more than a couple people, even if it is just a couple people, you want to consider some type of cyber liability insurance. All right, you guys still with me? All right, let's move to number eight. Number eight is going to be commercial auto insurance. Now, we talked a little bit about some general liability insurance in case of accidents, things like that. But this number eight is this commercial auto insurance. And I'm talking about ways to help your church, your ministry, your business save thousands of dollars by making sure that you consider some of these things that maybe you have not considered before that you need to be considering just in case something happens. If you don't have insurance, guess what? You're going to have to come out of your pocket, and we don't want that to happen. So, number eight here, commercial auto insurance. This covers church-owned vehicles, church vans, transportation ministry. So if you have a ministry, a church, and or a business, and you are transporting people from one place to the other, you want to have this commercial auto insurance. If there is an accident, God forbid, or somebody hits you, God forbid, or maybe a tire blows out or something like that, this covers any personal auto policies that may not be covered under church activity. And when I say not be covered under church activity, a lot of times some churches depend on volunteers, which is what I'm going to talk about a little bit later. Well, it's going to be the next one. But if your church owns a van, you want to make sure that you have this. And this is something that you can look at the coverage to see if it covers your church activities, if it covers all the parameters that are attributed to your church and or your ministry. So you want to think about the type of activities that you are engaging in and make sure that when you talk to your broker, that you are including those within your insurance policy. Again, it covers church-wide owned vehicles. It can cover vans, buses, any physical damage that requires the driver screenings, right? That's part of this process. You want to make sure that you do too. And the coverage limit should reflect the transportation activity. So the common coverage liability is about 1 million. Again, this is just the standard. I'm not saying go out and get 1 million. Talk to your broker to see what works for you, but it covers the coverage, the physical coverage for this particular policy should be based on the vehicle value, right? Based on the vehicle value. All right. And so I want to ask you, does your church have a written vehicle usage policy? So this is what's really going to help you with this coverage. You need to have a vehicle coverage policy or vehicle uses policy that everyone who is assigned to driving or accessing the vehicles at any time will need to sign and agree to. So I want you to ask yourself, do you have this policy already? Even without purchasing an insurance policy, do you have an internal vehicle use policy that you have everybody to sign who may be driving a van, driving a vehicle, driving a car, transporting people from one place to the next, or using those vehicles for church and or business activities? All right. Do you? If not, you probably need to come see me. We can talk about it and try to get things set up for you. All right, number nine. Number nine, we're almost there, y'all. Number nine, non-owned and hired auto coverage. This is what I was talking about as it relates to things that are not owned by your business and or your ministry. Usually, these are volunteers who are using their personal vehicles for church business, right? They're using their personal vehicles. So say your youth group is going to an event and everybody decides to carpool, or um, you are taking donations to the Goodwill or a donation bank, right? A food drive or something like that. And someone's driving their personal vehicle, but they're on church business. This is what you call non-owned and hired auto insurance coverage. Now, if you are doing this a lot, this is definitely something that you want to consider, because if you are not covered and something happens, this could cause your church, your ministry, your business thousands of dollars. That's why I'm here helping you save. Okay. So, This matters because a lot of churches usually overlook this. They usually overlook this. And if you think about it, it's almost like when you go rent a rental car, they ask you, do you want to use your personal insurance or do you want to use the car rental insurance company? And so this is the same thing, right? If a volunteer is not using the business vehicle or not using the business's vehicle or the ministry's vehicle and they're using their personal vehicle, and this happens a lot, right? This happens more times than not. You want to consider this insurance. It covers any conduct, like we said, with the church or your business, right? It supplements for personal auto insurance. So obviously people should have their own auto insurance if they're driving. We're going to say that everybody should have their own auto insurance, but it will supplement the personal auto insurance if something happens. And it's useful for volunteers, again, who are driving, and it helps reduce the exposure from transportation activities. All right. The limits for this is usually 1 million. Again, these are just common standards. You would want to work with your broker to see what works well for you. All right. So I'm going to ask you, how many volunteers do you have that are using their personal ministry vehicles? You have to ask yourself that question. And if the volume is a volume that is worth looking into this insurance that's commonly overlooked, many people don't even think about this insurance until something happens. And we don't want to be retroactive. We want to be proactive in this. All right. Number 10, the last one that we're going to talk about. How do you save your ministry thousands? Okay. How do you save your business, excuse me, thousands of dollars? Umbrella insurance. This is one of the more common ones. Umbrella liability insurance. It provides excess liability coverage. So you may have general liability insurance. You may have some of these other insurances that we talked about, but this umbrella insurance is in addition to. Some of those policies may go up to a certain amount, and this umbrella insurance allows you to get additional coverage. So it sits above any liability policies that you may already have in place. It can help with any catastrophic claims, and is usually offered large additional coverage limits. And so, this insurance is also usually really affordable. So, if you have a plan that you're working on right now and that you have for your church or ministry, and you want additional coverage, you want to look at this umbrella coverage because it's gonna help you have that additional coverage that you need. All right. So, if your church faced a $2 million lawsuit tomorrow, would your current coverage be enough? Would your current coverage be enough? Ask yourself that. And again, we don't like to talk about these things, but the way that things have been happening lately, I made mention of some things that I've read in the news lately about just lawsuits and things happening. You want to make sure that you are covered. You want to make sure that you are stewarding all areas of your life well, but you certainly want to make sure that you are covered. So the common coverage limits are 1 million, 2 million, or 5 million. Those are standard. Again, work with your insurance company to see what works best for you. Larger churches, you may want to go up to 10 million or more. 10 million or more. So I want to declare and just challenge you. Insurance does not replace our faith, it supports our stewardship. Right? We can lock our church doors, we can back up our computers, we can do all the things that we know to do, but it does not prohibit from a breach of some type. God forbid that it ever happens. But just in case, you want to be ready and you want to be prepared. All right. There is no universal standard to these coverages, but you want to look at your ministry, you want to look at your business to see what works best for you. All right. So one claim, one lawsuit is all that it takes. Does your insurance policies help you save money? How does this relate to your finances? Just what I said, it helps you save money, right? And so this is one of the things that we walk some of our clients through in considering, right? If you need recommendations, let us know. I would love to help. If you need more information on these, and or you want to know, is your ministry, is your church doing well financially? You want to sign up for a 30-minute financial health assessment with me. I'll drop the link somewhere around here that you can look in the description and talk through some of the areas that your ministry is currently navigating. You want to make sure, do you have a budget in place? Are you financially prepared and ready? What other things do you need? Do you have forecasting in place? That's a whole nother thing that we provide. But it is my job to help churches and small businesses and individuals steward their finances well. And if you are doing that well, keep it up. But if you know that you need help and you need assistance and you have not been as transparent about these things, you have to ask yourself, what are you hiding? Why are you hiding it? The numbers do not lie. Okay. And so we want to make sure that as God is aligning us, that we are stewarding what he has placed in our hands well, so that we can walk in multiplication, so that we can walk in freedom, and so that we can continue to steward all that he has placed in our hands so that we can receive the increase. All right. Blessings to each of you. If there are no questions, which I do not see any online, thank you for tuning in, Mr. Willie. I see you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all of you who have been tuning in and who are online. I look to talk with you all very soon, and we'll see you right back here next week. Blessings, everybody. Have an amazing rest of your week.